Bugatti's only real opportunity here isn't trying to shut Mat down or outmaneuver him from a distance. It's recognizing where the actual power sits in this moment and adapting to it. Right now, that power isn't in a boardroom, it isn't in a press release, and it isn't locked behind the polished glass walls of a legacy brand. It's sitting behind a camera lens in a workshop, broadcasting to millions of people in real time. And whoever holds that lens holds the narrative. Every shot Mat captures, every explanation he gives, every challenge he faces and works through is actively shaping how the public sees not just this rebuild, but Bugatti itself. This isn't happening slowly or quietly either. It's unfolding in front of an audience that reacts instantly, forms opinions instantly, then spreads those opinions faster than any traditional media channel ever could. That puts Bugatti in a position where the usual playbook doesn't quite work anymore. They can pretend this isn't happening, they can push back against it, or they can step into it. Ignoring it might feel like maintaining dignity, but to the outside world it comes across as detachment or even arrogance, as if they believe they're beyond scrutiny. Fighting it might feel like protecting their authority, but it risks looking defensive, as though they're worried about what this independent process might reveal. The third option, aligning with Mat in some way, is the only one that signals confidence. It suggests a company that believes in its own engineering so strongly that it's willing to let that engineering be examined, challenged, and even validated outside its own controlled environment. But that option isn't simple, and it's not free. It comes with a cost that isn't measured in money so much as in identity. Bugatti has spent decades building an image of absolute precision, exclusivity, and control. The idea that one of their cars can only truly be understood and restored within their ecosystem is part of what gives the brand its mystique. Letting an independent creator step into that space, even partially, risks softening that perception. It raises uncomfortable questions about whether that exclusivity is essential or constructed. At the same time, refusing to engage carries its own cost, and that cost is becoming more visible with every new video. Each episode doesn't just document progress on a car, it invites viewers to question the brand itself, to wonder whether its authority is as unshakable as it claims. What started as a niche project has turned into something much bigger, something closer to a public test of credibility. Every detail is being examined, from the smallest repair decision to the biggest engineering hurdle. When something goes wrong, it's not hidden, it's shared. When something works, it's celebrated, not just by Mat, but by an audience that feels like it's part of the journey. That transparency is powerful because it builds trust. People aren't just watching the outcome, they're watching the process, and that makes them believe in it. Over time, that belief transfers from the project to the person leading it. Mat isn't just documenting a rebuild anymore, he's building authority in real time. That's what makes this situation so delicate for Bugatti. The audience that has formed around this project isn't passive, they're invested, emotionally and intellectually. They're drawn to the idea of someone taking on something that feels out of reach, something that traditionally belongs to an elite circle, and proving that it can be understood and handled outside of it. They respond to persistence, creativity, and problem-solving in a way they never would to a polished marketing campaign. The more obstacles Mat encounters, the more compelling the story becomes. Every setback adds tension, every breakthrough delivers payoff, and the audience feels like they're experiencing it alongside him. If Bugatti positions itself against that, it risks stepping into the role of the antagonist. And in this kind of environment, that role rarely ends well. Online audiences don't rally behind institutions trying to maintain control. They rally behind individuals challenging it. If the brand comes across as obstructive or dismissive, it doesn't just lose the argument, it becomes part of the entertainment, often in a way that undermines its own image. Instead of being respected, it gets questioned. Instead of being admired, it gets critiqued. And once that shift happens, it's incredibly difficult to reverse. A decade ago, none of this would have played out in public. Situations like this would have been handled quietly, contained through legal agreements and internal decisions. The broader audience would never have known there was a story at all. But that era is gone. Now, everything unfolds in the open. And attempts to suppress or control information often draw more attention rather than less. The dynamic has flipped. Transparency isn't just a choice, it's an expectation. And when one side is fully transparent while the other remains silent, the transparent side almost always gains the upper hand in public perception. For Bugatti to navigate this successfully, it needs to rethink how it engages. Instead of trying to pull the story back into its own controlled environment, it needs to step into the environment where the story already exists. That doesn't mean giving up control entirely. It means redefining what control looks like, offering limited access, sharing insight, or even collaborating in a structured way allows the brand to become part of the narrative without being overshadowed by it. It changes the tone from opposition to cooperation, from tension to mutual respect. That shift would be immediately visible. The audience, which may currently be skeptical or even critical, would see a different side of the brand. They would see a company willing to engage rather than dismiss, to participate rather than dictate. That kind of move doesn't weaken a brand, it strengthens it, because it demonstrates confidence. It shows that the company believes its engineering can stand up to scrutiny, even in an unconventional setting. What's holding Bugatti back is likely not just concern over safety or technical accuracy, but the precedent it might set. If an independent creator successfully rebuilds and validates a car of this complexity without direct factory control, it challenges long-standing assumptions. It encourages other owners to ask whether they need to rely exclusively on the manufacturer for every aspect of maintenance and repair. It opens the door to a broader conversation about expertise, access, and authority. Those are not small questions, and they have implications that extend far beyond a single project. At the same time, staying out of the story doesn't prevent those questions from being asked. It simply means the answers will be shaped without Bugatti's input. If Mat succeeds entirely on his own, the narrative becomes one of independence overcoming exclusivity. The credit goes to him, and the brand is left on the outside, looking in. That's a far more difficult position to recover from than one where the brand is at least partially involved in the outcome. There's also an interesting paradox at play. Though from a purely strategic standpoint, the safest outcome for Bugatti might actually be failure. If the project doesn't succeed, it reinforces the idea that these cars require factory-level expertise and resources. It preserves the existing hierarchy. But if the project succeeds, especially in a way that appears methodical and repeatable, it shifts that hierarchy. It suggests that the gap between manufacturer and independent expert is smaller than previously believed, and that's where the real risk lies. Success doesn't just complete a rebuild, it redefines what's possible. It changes how people think about ownership, maintenance, and control in the world of high-performance engineering. It challenges the notion that authority must always remain centralized, and once that shift in thinking takes hold, it's not something that can be easily reversed through branding or messaging. So Bugatti is left with a genuine decision to make. It can adapt to this new landscape, finding a way to participate in the story as it unfolds, or it can remain on the sidelines and accept whatever narrative emerges. Silence is no longer neutral, it's interpreted. Every moment without engagement becomes part of the story in itself, often read as reluctance or resistance. On the other hand, even a small gesture of collaboration could dramatically alter the trajectory of public perception. If Mat ultimately succeeds and the brand has had no involvement, the spotlight will be entirely on him. The applause will go to the individual who took on the challenge and saw it through. But if Bugatti finds a way to be present in that moment, even in a limited capacity, it shares in that recognition. It becomes associated not just with the creation of an extraordinary machine, but with the willingness to support and validate excellence wherever it appears. The window for making that choice is still open, but it's not going to stay open indefinitely. Each new upload, each milestone reached, each new viewer drawn into the story strengthens Mat's position and solidifies the narrative forming around him. The longer Bugatti waits, the harder it becomes to shift that narrative in a meaningful way. At some point, the story will feel complete, and stepping in afterward will look less like collaboration and more like reaction. In the end, this was never just about whether a car could be rebuilt. That question is already being answered piece by piece. The deeper question is about who gets to define expertise, who gets to shape perception, and who adapts when the balance of influence changes. Bugatti can either take part in answering that question or watch as it's answered without them, and live with the version of the story that remains.